Well, hello and welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. I don't know if you can guess where we are, but if you look over our right-hand shoulder, you'll see the Sydney Opera House. So that means, of course, we are in Sydney, Australia.
And look at the hat. That's a clue, too. He thinks now he's an Aussie from down under.
Hey, don't you like my new purchase?
Yeah, and look at me. I wear the same thing, same old protection for my face, and it is a beautiful sunny day here. We've really lucked out with the weather.
It really is. You know, I can't believe that this is going into their winter time. I mean, we're running around in short sleeves. It's really wonderful.
It's just beautiful. So we're looking forward now to taking a luncheon cruise.
Yeah, and we're going to cruise the harbor here in Sydney and have a bite of lunch. And so we'd like for you to join us. So sit back and relax and join us here in Sydney, Australia.
Have fun.
Well, Betty, I'll tell you, this is really the day that I've been waiting for to take the cruise on Sydney Harbor. Oh, and here comes Captain Cook. Well, not Captain Cook.
Oh, I always wanted to meet Captain Cook. Oh, wow.
Isn't this a beautiful ship?
Yeah,
Isn't this gorgeous? And there's the captain up there, and he's bringing you right into shore. You know, they do so many of these cruises, morning cruises and afternoon cruises. In fact, the one that we're going on today will be the lunch cruise. And, oh, my goodness, just wait till you see the food.
Yeah, and we just got through eating breakfast.
Yes.
And you know what? I still pigged out. I cannot believe it.
There's something about the water, I think, that kind of makes you feel, you know, hungry all the time.
I see the food and I start to salivate. It's just awful.
Well, our adventurers are on board now, and we are going to take... in fact, see this little ship right here, Betty?
I sure do.
That is very interesting, and toward the end of the show today, we're going to see a little bit more on this particular ship, and we'll show you some scenes of that after a bit. But look at that beautiful skyline of the city, and we're right downtown, because this is where also some of the tour ships come in as well, and this is just magnificent. Oh, there you go. Oysters on the half shell.
Well, I left those for you.
Did you? Well, I didn't care for oysters myself, but there were all sorts of other wonderful things here. You can look at that ham and just wonderful, and the salmon. Oh my goodness sakes! Look there, young man has a salmon right there.
It's almost too much having just had breakfast. I think a coffee cruise would have been very nice.
Probably so. And here is the Sydney Harbor Bridge, which is the main thoroughfare. Let's listen to our guide now as she explains a little bit about the origins.
The English decided to build a penal colony here. They sent out the first fleet to come out to Australia. That was 11 ships with 1,300 passengers on board. They arrived here in Sydney Harbour on the 26th of January. But still, all these people here, there wasn't a lot of British currency in the colony, not a lot of British money. And Australia actually became what was known as a rum currency. What happened was, because there wasn't any printed money to pay the soldiers and the army that were here, they actually used to pay them in rum. And they trade for their food and their clothes in rum. But of course you can imagine most of these soldiers getting their week's pay in rum were more likely to drink the rum than to trade with it. So it was a very rowdy place back in the early 1800s here in Sydney. Over on our right hand side, Berry's Bay. Alexander Berry, a very rich man at that time, because he was actually the first one to import rum to Australia. Over on our left hand side, this is Goat Island. When the first fleet came out to Australia, they took 8.5 months to reach Australia. Only 4 goats survived the trip, so they were put on this island here to stop them from straying. So that's why it's called Goat Island. Today on Goat Island, the Maritime Services Board keep all their wharfing and dredging equipment here, as well as the emergency response tugs. You can see those red and black boats there. But hopefully this is going to look very different in about 12 months' time. They're planning to move all this wharfage off the island. The Maritime Services Board will remove all the wharves and the sheds from here. This is actually going to become part of the public parkland around the harbour. So they'll have regular ferry services across to the island. People will be able to come across and spend the day picnicking on Goat Island.
I was surprised, Betty, to see how many islands are here in the harbor that make up the harbor. Yeah, it's so big.
I like the idea of Goat Island. We think that Sydney looks so much like San Francisco, and you know San Francisco has a Goat Island too, which we now call Treasure Island.
Oh, I didn't realize that was the name.
So there are other similarities there. Very interesting,
Very interesting, yeah. The skyline just impresses me so much. And as we will see in today's time
Here
to
we
eat.
go.
Time to eat already. My goodness sakes, it didn't take us any time at all, did it? We just got right out in the harbor and bingo.
And now we go, yeah.
Chow down time, huh?
Oh, gosh.
Let's listen to our guide again as she explains a little bit about the Aborigines.
That looked like Jean was really giving some advice to Betty, didn't it?
It was wiped out within 20 years of colonisation. In other areas of Australia, of course, there were big wars between the whites and the Aboriginals, but that wasn't a problem here in Sydney. They actually had very good relations with the Aboriginals here. The problem here was disease, because all the convicts coming over from England, they brought with them all the diseases that were rife in Europe at that time: smallpox, cholera, chickenpox. And of course the Aboriginals had no immune system to cope with these diseases. So as they came in contact with the convicts, caught these diseases, almost the whole tribe was wiped out in 20 years of colonisation.
It certainly is breathtaking, isn't it?
Yeah. What are you talking about, the food or the scenery, Mark?
Both.
I wondered where your sights were on, what they were on.
Well, you know, it's so interesting. I mean, you can sit there and you can eat, and these beautiful ships. You can look out, and this harbor, of course, just goes on forever. I thought when I'd looked at a map, I thought, you know, the harbor's just sort of a harbor, but it just goes. Yeah. There's inlets and outlets and islands, and well, we spent a good portion of the midday just taking this cruise, yeah.
And the homes that we see later on, even the buildings. Look at the and the construction that's going on.
You notice that, yeah. See the big cranes up there, and you get to see so much of this area. This must be a New Zealand ship. See the Kiwi up there?
Oh, sure.
This is some sort of a freighter, huh?
It certainly needs some type of repair, doesn't it?
Well, you don't see anybody out there scraping and a painting, so maybe when it goes back to New Zealand, that's probably what will happen, I suspect.
There really is a kaleidoscope of events, of things that take place right here in this harbor. You go from one thing to another, the new, the old.
And the stuff in between.
And the stuff in between, right.
It's amazing to see also, and we're going to pass some of the little yacht harbors and the yacht clubs that you go through, or go by, I should say, and in some of these little secluded bays.
Marv, are those containers of something there that we
on
saw
ship?
on that? Well,
yeah, that was
those are container ship then, huh?
I suspect that was a container ship,
right.
yeah. And this whole area, this wharf area, some of it is still active, but other parts of it have been closed, and they're going to use this more, I think, some of the area anyway, for tourist things, because as you'll see, we're coming up right now to a portion of this has been converted into a theater. If you see, it says Sydney Theater Company at the wharf.
Yeah, it kind of makes you think of Cannery Row down in Monterey. Not really, because it's not that close to the water there, but it's the buildings and things.
Yeah, and so this is again just a part of that scene here in Sydney Harbor. And you don't see any of the other big ships there, but the big thing you do see.
Look at that.
This thing is immense. You know, you look at it from a distance and you go, yeah, okay, that's quite a bridge. But getting up underneath it like this, I mean, the train goes over it, and I don't know how many lanes of traffic in each direction.
You can sort of see the width of it now. You see from underneath.
Going underneath it, right.
And yet the top has a lacy effect to it. It's really quite beautiful.
It is. And you get this angle, looks like something out of Star Wars.
Right.
Oh, but it is a big bridge.
Now, where did they get the steel to build it?
I imagine they probably manufactured that themselves.
Right there, do you think,
sure.
in Sydney?
Yeah, I would suspect so.
Okay.
I don't know. I would imagine somewhere in Australia, being the continent is as large as it is, that that steel mills are there. Ooh, that's hard to say, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you get the shush, you know.
But I did want you to take a real good look at this, because this is well, the bridge, of course, is famous all over the world. I mean, you see this particular
a little
span.
different than the bridge over the River Kwai, huh?
Just a little bit different, right. And you notice it does tie the city together. And there it is, the Sydney Opera House. The roof here was designed to sort of resemble sails, and of course the whole opera house sits out in the water. It's a little promontory out there, and it sits out in the water, so it looks like it could actually be floating. But you know, Betty, when this was built and when it was designed, boy, the citizens, a lot of them of Sydney said, hey, you're not going to put that thing up there. That's an eyesore. It's just absolutely horrible.
But you know, the cost of it was horrendous too. It went up so much more so than they ever thought it was going to be.
I think you find that most anywhere, you know. But now, this is probably the greatest symbol for the city of Sydney and also probably for the country of Australia, because everyone, I think, is familiar with the Sydney Opera House.
But you know, it covers 4.5 acres.
That's a lot of room.
Isn't it? That's a lot of acres, huh? And there are 1,056,000 tiles up there on.
Well, that's
that
what makes
roof.
up the roof, right?
Mm-hmm. The little individual tiles. Gosh, I sound so smart today, don't I?
Yeah, that's good.
It's a good thing I had a little book that I read these things, because I don't remember that
well. You know,
well.
I didn't get a chance to take the tour this time of the Opera House, but I did go down underneath. There is a beautiful reference library under there. And, of course, a lot of that is, you know, for research on a lot of the operas and symphonies and things that are being done. And they did have some things for sale down there, so that it was very, very interesting.
Well, they have a concert hall, Marv, and then they have the opera theater, and they have a drama theater with everything that you could possibly want.
And a lot of workshops and classes, of course, that can be taken as well.
It's a great tour.
It certainly is, and I want to take it the next time that we go down there.
When are we going again?
We're going to go in February.
February. You usually throw that question at me, so now I've reversed the procedure.
Okay.
When did you say, Marv?
February.
February what?
I don't know. What is the date? February the 2nd.
Oh,
that's right, yeah.
You are so smart. Thank you
That's
so
right.
much. Now,
You're welcome.
you did the pitching today, and that's nice.
Well, in case you would like to go with us, we have a few seats left, and but boy, the cutoff time is just coming right away. That's our hotel, by the way, in the background. As you can see, you get quite a view from that particular high-rise, and it was located in a great area of Sydney as well. So we should mention, though, if you would like to go with us, do get in touch with us right away so that we can make your reservation.
So this afternoon, if you want to walk off some of that lunch you've enjoyed, you might like to come and have a walk through the gardens here. Come out to the point. That's Mrs. Macquarie's chair, specially built for Mrs. Macquarie, so she could sit here and enjoy the views around the harbour. Quite a few Navy ships down on our right-hand side there. This is the Garden Island dockyards. This is where the Navy maintain their fleet in the harbour. A couple of ships here today which were welcomed back to Sydney about 3 weeks ago. The HMAS Sydney, HMAS Brisbane, and you can see the 304, which is the HMAS Success. These ships were part of Australia's forces in the Gulf. They came back to Sydney about 3 weeks ago. They've been brought here to Garden Island. This is where they'll be refitted and repainted. At Garden Island, this is where the Navy maintain their fleet. We actually have quite a large Navy presence here in Sydney Harbour, as this is where the Navy was formed back in 1911, and this is also still the main headquarters for the Navy on the east coast of Australia, so there's quite a few Navy bases around Sydney Harbour. Now we're just about to pass the HMAS Sorens, which is number 53 there. I'll just explain actually some of the flags that you'll see around the harbour. The white flag at the stern of the Sorens, the back of the Sorens, you can see it's flying a white flag with blue stars. Now this is the Navy flag. Of course our national flag is the blue flag, which you can see at the back of our boat. And this is the national flag. Also around the harbour you'll see a red flag. The ferries all fly a red flag with white stars. That's a maritime flag. This means that any boat can fly the red flag, the maritime flag, but only Navy vessels can fly the white flag.
Betty, I was mentioning just a moment ago, of course, people are interested in taking this cruise to New Zealand, this trip and this cruise, which we're on now, to New Zealand and Australia. They've got to get in touch with us right away because we're really kind of sneaking under the cutoff date, aren't we?
Yes.
So give us a call at 488-7443 or drop us a real fast line at 1550 North Fresno Street, Fresno 93703. We'll repeat that again during the rest of the program because we can get just a few more in, but it's going to be very difficult, so we need to hear from you like yesterday almost.
Yeah,
huh?
I'd hate to have you miss it if you really have been wanting to go.
Yeah, and it's such a great place to go to too, you know, it's just wonderful. Boy, wouldn't you like to have one of these little boats out there?
I don't know.
Nice?
You always have a yen for that. You like the
Ooh,
boats and you like the birds,
great.
so it's the
Yeah.
B&Bs.
Probably so. Our guide's going to explain some more to it.
We're just coming round on our right-hand side. The Rushcutters Bay is coming up with all the yachts you can see moored at Rushcutters Bay. As we go down past this side of the harbour, on our right-hand side, we'll be passing the eastern suburbs of Sydney as we go down this side. Now, on the eastern side, this of course is the most densely populated side of the harbour on the eastern side, much more so than over on the north. You can see there's lots of units here, so lots of redevelopment of the land. All these new units being built. Most of the high-rise ones you'll see here, though, were built around the 1970s. These days, actually very strict laws about the height of buildings that can be constructed around the harbour. Most of the councils here really won't let you build anything over 5 stories. So most of these big high-rises built in the 1970s, you won't see any of those types of buildings being constructed around the harbour anymore. And of course, along these waterfront suburbs there's some beautiful houses here. This is Darling Point, and there's a lovely big white house here with a green dome on top. It's called Craig End, and this house was built in 1926 by an American man called Captain Patrick. He had a shipping company in the harbour. Now, the captain was a great traveller. He'd been to India in the 20s, also what was then Siam and Africa. Brought back to Australia actually 2 lovely African doors, beautiful carved doors with the pointed tops on them. In the end, he liked them so much he built his house around them to remind him of his travels. So that's why that house is such an Arabian look with the green dome on top, the pointed archways in the front, because it was actually built around a set of Arabian doors. Of course, also around the harbour you'll see some beautiful boats as well as some beautiful houses. This one only just arrived on the harbour. It's about a month old and reported to have cost its owner over $4.5 million. The old house along the waterfront here, the sandstone house coming up with the yellow shutters on top. It's called Carthona, and this house was built in the 1830s by Sir Major Thomas Mitchell. Actually, Carthona is also the name of a castle on Lake Windermere in England, and the Major had his house modelled on that castle. When the plans were drawn up in England for the house, he also had all the stonework cut there as well. So all the stone in this house actually comes from England, it's not from Sydney. And what happened was apparently in the 1830s, most of the stonemasons in Sydney were still convict tradesmen. So the Major didn't think that they were skilled enough to build his house. So rather than risking them doing a bodgy job, he had all the stonework cut in England and then shipped out to Australia, brought to Darling Point, where he built Carthona. This is actually a public sea pool. Built in the 1930s, the sea pool is to protect the swimmers from sharks, because there are actually sharks in Sydney Harbour. Back in those days, people had to be very careful where they swam anywhere around the harbour. These days, though, you find because there's so much traffic in these areas, not many sharks, or you really won't see any sharks at all here, because they're frightened off from the noise of the engines. But we still do see sharks around the entrance of the harbour, in the quieter areas, so lots of people still think it might be better to be safe than sorry, I suppose, and they still use the sea pools around the harbour.
Well, Betty, I definitely think that there is a high rent area here, as we see in Sydney Harbour. In fact, it's so much of it. Of course, as she was saying, that this is one of the most densely populated areas, but you know, you don't see an awful lot of private homes, except for those $4 million homes, but an awful lot of apartments, and I would imagine condominiums.
Well, if you've got enough money, they're not expensive. It's just like anything else, huh? If you have the money, then you don't worry about the expense.
That's
of how
right.
much they
Yeah,
are.
yeah. You don't worry about that at all. But
Well,
there are some really, really nice looking places, and of course, the beautiful thing here too is that, they all have a fabulous
A
view.
But look how close they are together.
I think you're going to find that in any
anywhere.
city.
I
Yeah.
guess wherever the property is valuable, they have to do that,
Sure.
don't they?
Now, the area that we're going to right now is just really right across the little harbor from what we just saw. And this is where the zoo is. And from what I understand, we didn't have an opportunity to visit their zoo in Sydney, but I understand that they do have quite a lovely zoo here. And this is on another, I'm not quite sure whether this is an island or just a promontory that sticks out there. These rock formations are very pretty, aren't
Now,
they?
is this where the captain's wife, well, I guess it was the captain's wife, has a bench and you
No, that
sat
was the
there?
other side that we
That was on
saw.
the other side,
That
huh?
was the other side that we saw a little bit earlier.
I
yeah.
get confused sometimes.
Well, it's a little confusing too, especially if you're eating and then look up and you're on one side of the harbor or the other, because you go into all these little inlets and you're wandering around quite a bit, so it could be easy to get
Hey,
confused. that
it
way.
looks like we're about ready to have a collision here. What are we
I
doing?
don't know. This thing looks really old,
Oh, it's
doesn't it?
raunchy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Golly.
it looks like an old warship, but
Like going off and be
I don't-
sunk somewhere.
it could make for a new reef. Look at all the rust and stuff
Yeah.
on the bottom of that.
Well, we've saw quite a number of them that had the rust. So whether they just don't have, well, they must have the help. Maybe they just don't use them enough to keep them up.
With ships like this all the time, and you notice even with our cruise to the Caribbean on the luxury liners, they're always painting, always scraping, and always painting, because that's salt water and the salt air, of course, just eat right into
I
that.
know it destroys cars too.
Oh, sure it does, yeah. This is as you can see, some of the area there in one end of the zoo there in Sydney, and they have these, what do you call it, cable car type things that go up over that, yeah. And here's some of our adventurers sitting out in the, it's just, it's so
That's
relaxing, you could
Richard,
just go right
Sarah.
to sleep.
He's been on many trips with us, and there is Jim and
Jim and Liz, Scott,
from up at Course Golden, Jean, and oh my God, that looks like Betty. No, it couldn't be. That's with Sarah.
Yeah,
Sarah
I think it
Gurr.
was, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of, and again here you can see we're hitting the Opera House from many different directions, so, but as we say, all these wonderful homes that have these magnificent views.
You know, Marv, you can't miss the Opera House. No wonder people talk about it so much of the time. Wherever you go, you do see the
I think that's true, the Opera
House
House and the Great Bridge. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very
Look at the
true.
little lighthouse. Isn't that cute?
I think you'd have to have something out there, you're
don't
wandering
know.
around in the fog or the dark,
Do you
wouldn't
think
want to
they
hit
call that a lighthouse, or is that just a big boy? Big boy hamburger.
No, I
That's a-
suspect it probably does
Is
light
it
up.
light
Yeah,
up?
because look, you see that rock was kind of sticking out there quite a bit. Here's some more. Again, just another area of the harbor. I love
Look at
these
the
houses. Look at all the glass. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, views
Isn't that
everywhere.
beautiful?
And the nice thing, you can look out. Nobody can look in really because
So you don't need curtains.
No, because you're out on a boat and it doesn't really make any difference. So
Well, this one was going up for auction.
did
as
you
it
go
says
to
right
try
there,
to
too.
buy that? Did you put in your
No,
bid?
I don't. Listen, from what she said on just a couple of those places, what they cost. This is high-priced real estate, very
Was
high
$4
price.
million, didn't
For that
she
one
say,
house,
for the
yeah.
one house?
And it had only been
Yes.
there just a short period of time. And then they probably had a $2 or $3 million yacht sitting out there in front
Marv,
of it
where
too.
does all this money come from?
Well, I don't know.
I mean-
who knows?
I mean, there's a lot of moneyed people buying these homes. Where do they have?
I suspect that there's a lot of wealthy people in Australia. This house up here belonged to a government official, and the one that we're going to see next, I believe, belonged to the governor of the particular area there. And so this has been here for quite some time. But look how magnificent
Yeah,
this is!
and look
Isn't
at
it
the
beautiful?
plantings. Look at all of the
Yeah.
green around it. Isn't it beautiful? And we were at a time of the year that was going into
autumn. Mhm.
Yeah. Now we're going this time at a different time of the year, and I think it should be very interesting because we will be going just at the tail end of summer.
Tail end of their summer.
Of their
yeah.
summer, right.
Still our winter
Our
time in
winter,
February,
yeah.
right.
But I meant for our traveling over
Mhm.
there, so it should be
Yeah, in fact, it should even be
interesting.
more beautiful than
Right.
than the pictures that we're looking at today, And so we do want to remind you that we will be going back on the 2nd of February to New Zealand and Australia, both countries, And we do have a few spaces that we could get you in, but you've got to let us know right away. Because
Qantas is getting rather
they're getting
antsy
very
about
antsy,
it now.
yeah,
They
and
say, "Let us know. We have to save those seats for
Betty's
you, or
trying
give
to,
them."
Betty's trying to drag her feet on it, but they're not too happy about that. So, and this week being, here's the young lady that gave the description. Yeah, the talk. Yeah, that's,
That help?
Yeah, but what I wanted to say is, being that this will be shown during Christmas week, sometimes our phones will not be answered because we want to take a little time off too. So do give us a call as soon as you can, and Betty will, when she's back in the office, return your call.
Well, I have a recorder, so I can always get the message. All I
Right.
have to do is call in and get
the
a
number
message.
is 488-7443. Repeat that again, 488-7443. We told you in the earlier part of the program that we were going to take a look again at this ship, this old sailing ship that was also in the harbor, and this is beautiful.
Yeah.
This must be a replica of probably, Betty, I imagine one of the early ships that brought some of the pioneers, over.
Yeah, I've seen ships like this. They have a lot of these types of ships in Boston, and they really are interesting. But you think about traveling on them. My goodness! Then compare that with the Westerdam, the comfort.
Yeah.
The ease.
Look at this guy is sewing up
Yeah.
the canvas there as part of
As
the
a
sail.
sail.
It looked to me as though that they were using tools that they might have used during the days when these were
When there was-
real ships.
Do you think that's for sale?
I think that's for sale.
Okay. We won't buy today, though. We'll just let it go today.
But here's a picture of that ship in it.
It's
I
a
think
lovely
it's
plaza
beautiful, isn't
there,
it?
isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
This
we
whole
did-
area is really developed nicely, and there it
There
goes.
it
It's
goes,
going on
yeah.
out to sea.
Isn't that exciting?
Isn't
I'm
that
glad I'm not
beautiful?
on it, but it's really beautiful to
I have a
look
hunch,
at.
Betty. You see the sails are not unfurled. I think there's an engine in that thing with the
It
propeller.
may-
in the
I'm
bottom.
sure you're right. And I don't think it's going any distance. But I don't know. Well, who am I to say?
Never can tell. It
know.
may be
No.
maybe sailing off into the seas.
Do you think
but
we should maybe charter that for our next cruise, Marv?
I think it's a little primitive.
I do too. All right, then if you say so.
I think it's a little primitive. Yeah, we do have another cruise coming up in 1992, and that will be in August. We are going to go up to Alaska. Again, as Betty mentioned, on the ship, the Westerdam, which we recently took to the Caribbean. And so we can send you some information on that too.
Oh,
Just
look.
before we leave, I wanted to get some real close shots again of the Opera House. And Betty mentioned earlier that there's all these tiles that make up the roof. And here you can see a little bit of the pattern of those tiles. And again, it does look like gigantic sails there. And it is really quite magnificent. And it's worth going through, don't you think, Betty?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I enjoyed just standing looking at it, though. I mean, it's tremendous.
And there are little restaurants out there
Uh-huh.
on either side, so you could sit and have coffee and just
We ate
really
ice cream,
admire
too,
it.
and sat on the quay. Is it the quay?
Uh-huh, right, that's, yeah. And
Yeah.
as you can see, the Drama Theater, a Restaurant Harbor, and there's many things within the building itself that you can go take a look at.
This is a trip you would never be disappointed in.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are interested, give us a call right away. It's time for us to say goodbye, so we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.